Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I would like to talk about all of my current writing projects. So, it's Thursday. It's the day after I recorded my video talking about the fact that I haven't been reading much recently. I mention this simply because if you can see, I've accidentally got white paint in my hair from when I've been decorating the bathroom. Then let's just ignore it for today. I thought I'd draw attention to it. I know it's there. Let's move on. So, the reason that I want to put this video out there is because I'm aware that over the last year or so I've talked about a lot of different writing projects, and it might seem as though there's a lot going on but we aren't really seeing much come from that. So I suppose the one that I'll talk about, the main one, the one that I announced in May of 2023 is the second Alice Valentine book. Now I have decided that I'm definitely changing the title now, so that little notice I made in Shepherd's Delight is now incorrect. However, that means that anyone who has an edition of Shepherd's Delight in which it says Mistakes Make Murder coming out 2024, when I am a bestseller, which technically I could call myself a bestseller now, when I am more popular, then they'll be worth something. But I have now decided to retitle it Mistakes Mean Murder. I feel like that just hits the ear better than the previous title. And where are we? So I accidentally finished writing this novel on Easter Monday and then read it over the following 2 days. I recognised immediately that I needed to take a step away from the book, but throughout the writing of it, I knew what changes I might want to make going forwards that were major changes that I didn't feel comfortable editing as I went along with them. Like, I always edit as I go along anyway, but certain changes would have meant huge rewrites, whereas now, looking at the story, I've recognised I don't need to make the big, huge rewrites that I was planning. There is one scene in the beginning of the book in which Alice enters a house and she converses with her mother, and I realised that I need to include her father there, and I would like to include more of Alice's parents in this book in the rewrite. So over June, I'm hoping to work on the edits and the new chapters that I want to write for the book. I'm saying chapters, they might not be chapters. They currently are just scenes that I believe are necessary to better tell the story, so that there isn't so much telling in different scenes and so much reported action as there is getting to see it on the page. I also felt like on a read through that Alice more or less stumbles across everything in this book, and I want her to actually show some more foresight. Similarly, there is a scene in Duke's part of the tale where it just jumps from one house to him finding the solution, and I didn't feel like I needed this intermediary bit, but I've realised it's necessary. And I'd forgotten a main part of the way that Partridge News works is gossip, and so this thing that's happening, everyone's going to know about it, and most people are going to recognise who the culprit was, and so I decided to actually insert a scene there. But otherwise, it doesn't feel like such a daunting task to get that one rewritten and edited. After the rewrite, I hope to send the book out to beta readers, and from then hire Dane of Dane Reads should he have the time. If he doesn't, then I'm gonna have to wait, or I'm gonna find a different. No, I'm gonna wait. So whenever Dane is available, I'm going to ask Dane if he will edit Mistakes Mean Murder as he did with An Heir to Murder and Royally Doris. And you know, the cover's done, the blurb's done, and hopefully I can have this book out at some point this year. Which brings me on to the third Alice Valentine book, currently titled Serving Looks Could Kill. I am writing from a perspective of a character that we are going to meet in the second Alice Valentine book, and it is going to be a different format than we've seen in the current Alice Valentine books, but it's going to be related to the ongoing mystery of the disappearance of Joanna Ollinshead. This book takes Alice off to Blackpool and sees a murder at a drag show. It relates to, as I say, the disappearance of Joanna Ollinshead and another murder from many years before that we hear about in Mistakes Mean Murder. I began writing this book at the Writers Group last week, and I'm currently working on snippets of this diary entry, but I know the majority of that story. It's just getting the voice down and then into planning, into writing the thing. So last year, I was struggling to know what to write when it came to the second Alice Valentine book or the charity shop novel. When I finished writing Royally Doris, I didn't want to go directly into writing a series. However, I recognised that it had been so long since the first Alice Valentine book that I wanted to get that out there. I didn't mean it to take another year. I had hoped for this book to be out last year. I'd hoped that I'd be finished by September, because in May of last year, I just couldn't stop working on this book, and I wrote so much. I was working at 2,000 words a day. And then we just had a few familial things happen. We had elderly family members become seriously ill, and then we had a bereavement, and this one in particular just left me unable to work on this book. And as I've said before, the people that know about that know about it, the ones that need to know. So that's why I released the poetry collection Shepherd's Delight, because that was finished and I just didn't know when to bring it out, and it ended up coming out on the date that I planned to release the second Alice Valentine book. But I also didn't have any events planned, because I don't know whether my poetry's a hard sell. I don't know. I was still feeling the sting from the Royally Doris, and I feel like the more time I left, the less want there was going to be for events. I don't know, it's just the way my mind works. But in terms of the charity shop novel, I wrote the first chapter, the first part. I don't know how it's working because I wasn't doing any chapter headings or anything. I was just, this is one voice, this is the main voice of the story from Martin's perspective, and then we have the script portions in there. And I wrote the first part, and I had hoped when I finished writing the second Alice Valentine book to go into that, because it does relate to Alice Valentine and Doris in some way. And I did want to write this standalone book, and the plan is there. I could read that plan, write the scenes and get through it, and I really hope to do so. But it's just, if the characters aren't in your head and the impetus to write it isn't there, like at the end of last year, I discovered a play competition for, it was something to do with Victoria Wood anyway, and I was going to turn the charity shop novel into a stage play, and I had a month to do so. Then my manager tasked me with writing some poems for her mother's ceremony to celebrate her life, and I just ended up in more of a poetical mood. So as much as I wanted to be working on novels or this play, I was very poetic last year, and my main focus throughout the year that was taking me away from my novel writing was poetry. And it was as though Joy and I had switched places, because she was supposed to be working on her novel. No, she was supposed to be working on her poetry and was working on a novel, and I was supposed to be working on my novel but was working on poetry. Things have changed now, and I managed to get that book written, but currently I know that I want to write that charity shop book. It currently has the title Charity Case, if anyone was wondering, but I haven't touched it in over a year, apart from printing it off earlier this year and reading it, and regularly reading parts to people at the Writers Group, where I was very lucky that it was well received. It's a slower style than my Doris book. It's still comedic. It's a bit of a black comedy, and there's a plot that I really like in there. It feels like my most novel of novels. Like the most, it just, in my head, it is all there. I just need to get the darn thing written, as I say regularly. As I just mentioned, there was a lot of poetry writing last year, so the second poetry collection is still ongoing. I have been enjoying the process of writing the poems, as I was the first time around. The first poetry collection has a lot about my family in there, which the second doesn't. The second has more humour in there, more stories of characters, stories that I've heard from people. I have started all of my sets at Poems and Pints recently saying that if you recently did this, this isn't about you because of when I ended up summoning that naturist. But I have continued to write other people's stories. And I think in terms of this collection, there need to be a few more landscape poems, a few more personal poems, and then it'll be done. It's all about spring and love. So I don't think that this book will be out this year. In my mind, it's going to be next spring. Just give me some space is what I'm thinking, and time to fully collate this collection. I was trying to get it all done in spring last year because as soon as we transition over, like not from summer necessarily, but autumn and winter, the memory of spring disappears quite quickly. And otherwise, future projects, because I've mentioned others in the past, for about a decade now, I've had the idea for this novel called A Prior Commitment, in which a woman is so fed up of everybody and everything that she lies and tells them that she's dying. Now, in her head, she is just thinking, well, everyone does it, but then people start coming back into her life and she begins to recognise how much people might mean to her that she didn't think. And then we have 2 more books after Serving Looks Could Kill in the Alice Valentine series, the first arc in any case, and then I'm hoping to go to more standalone things. I say this, but I always end up making things a lot bigger than they originally set out to be. And then we have this project that appeared last month, the middle grade novel that is in no way related to the middle grade series that I planned over a decade ago, which I shared part of a few years back when I went back to it and was working on a rewrite of that novel. I never actually got past the chapter 18 point of this novel when I was doing the rewrite. It might happen in future, but the current middle grade novel that I'm working on that was inspired by seeing mushrooms in trees, it's this magical adventure story about a group of people who try and protect a forest. I am working on that. It is one that is rarely out of my mind, but it's not something that I think I'd self-publish. It's not something that I would have an interest in trying to get out there myself. It's something I'd very much, if I do finish it, I might try and get it traditionally published, but I don't mind just having this series there as a bit of fun, similar to what the previous middle grade book that I was working on was. I can be as weird and creative as possible in those middle grade novels, and I quite like doing that, and I enjoy the research that goes into the writing of them. When I am eventually allowing myself to buy more books again, and borrow them. I'm thinking of borrowing some middle grade books from the library. Probably going to be an ongoing project for a few years, but is not something that I'm writing with any intent to get published at the moment. It's just writing that as fun. Whereas the Alice Valentine series, the Charity Shop novel, and A Prior Commitment are all books within this sphere of Partridge Muse, and the poetry collection as well, which isn't Partridge Muse, but they're all books that I see myself self-publishing, bringing out under various altitudes. Although I won't deny I did send An Heir to Murder to a publisher earlier this year, and they had some very nice things to say when they sent it back to me and rejected it. I had hopes to send it to some more publishers of cozy crime. Part of me thinks it'd be nice to offload that onto somebody else just to alleviate some of the costs, but as always, we will see what happens in future with that. some of the places that I want to send it aren't yet open for submissions, but I'm hoping that one day they will be. Anyway, that's me, and I have about 5 minutes to get ready and get off to town for the writers group, so I am going to call things a day here. If you would like to hear any more about my writing projects or have any questions, then please feel free to ask them in the comments below. Similarly, if you're working on anything writing wise and you want to chat about it, we can do that too. I hope that you got something out of this video, because until next time, that is all.